Well, hi, everyone. Very good to be with you. We're short on time, so I'm going to be giving you a very brief overview of sort of the state of the field right now, and a look at perhaps a new look and a new way of thinking about immigration politics from the ground up. So as an outline to my remarks today, I'm just going to begin with discussing sort of the state of politics with immigration and a discussion of the people who we need to interact with in order to broaden the alliance of people interested in immigration and concerned with the plight of immigrants. And then we'll discuss some action items, some ways that I think would be helpful for everyone to think about as they return back to their work, their jobs, and their lives with their families. So to begin, what we're seeing right now with immigration and the nature of polarization and the sort of siloization of the American populace is an instant where we are deepening support for immigrants among people who already care for them, deepening a constituency of people who are woke, who are concerned about immigrants, and who care. But we're not actually seeing the broadening of this alliance to people who are perhaps discomforted by immigrants, but largely supportive, people who are unsure, who are finding it complicated, who are perhaps uninformed about immigration, but actually see it as an issue that matters to the American people and to their lives. And so we have to think about new ways of broadening that support rather than solely deepening it into our silos, into the people who are concerned. The second thing is, I think, an understanding why this is happening right now. And this relates to, I think, the style of our politics today. We have seen this sort of change of racism in the way people understand racism. While on the left, people view racism as one of the most important social concepts of the 20th century, as something that actually helps alert us to our double standards and to our implicit biases. Unfortunately, many people outside of pro-immigration circles and left-wing circles in the United States view racism as a way of silencing people. Using it as a label to actually exclude people from the conversation by invalidating what they think, even if they actually might be potential allies in the future. And this is one of the reasons why is that racism itself has been used in these ways to sort of make people feel like they're more silenced as a result. Support for law and order amongst people outside of the current coalition of supporters of immigration is actually quite strong. We cannot have discussions about immigration while being turned off by by questions of control, by questions of regulation, by questions of governance. Overall and overwhelmingly, the American people actually want to see some semblance of control, some semblance of regulation, and only then are they actually willing to start thinking about broadening our reach, broadening our recruitment of immigrants into our society. So all of these factors are sort of defining our politics today. The result is that the people on the outside, many of whom are the people I studied in white working class communities and white suburban communities in America, is that they're starting to feel more marginal to these politics. They often feel outnumbered, they often feel external from these debates, and they also often feel discriminated for being white and for being poor, or for being white and for being less educated, or for being white and feeling skeptical about immigration. All of these they view as means of silencing them, much in the way that the racism label has been used. And so this is what many of you are up against on a day-to-day basis when you're trying to actually broaden the alliance, when you're trying to broaden your numbers. And this has led to a group of people who we need to desperately engage, but who actually feel consumed by a sense of loss. And from my studies, which involve nationally representative survey research, but also in-depth ethnographic, interview-based fieldwork in the upper Midwest of the United States, this loss can relate to both lost wealth, lost social status, but particularly lost political power. And people are simply feeling that they have somehow lost that sense of status and power as time has gone, and that they cease to matter. We have to bring people in and show them that they have power, but also show them that and show them that we care about what they're saying in order to actually broaden that alliance. Now, much of this actually connects with the sort of challenges of the racial and ethnic nature of our subject matter. Immigrants to the United States in the last 50 years are predominantly people of color, and so that has complicated our politics significantly. But rather than actually making this a point of division, it's possible to actually make this a point of strength. But we cannot be attacking what have been called people's sacred truths. Many people have very strong feelings about immigration, have very strong conceptions of America. We have to actually meet them where they are rather than actually trying to think about this as a way of persuading them, changing their minds. So, and this is about listening ultimately. It's about listening to where people are and then trying to meet them halfway, trying to meet them in a place where we can adapt and interpret the way they view the world into a way that actually opens their world to immigrants more broadly. So in terms of things to do, I think that there are questions that we must ask ourselves and that we must challenge ourselves to address. The first question is, how can we revere American heritage without arguing over status and worth, without arguing about who's more deserving of care, who's more vulnerable, who is more deserving of our attention or of our political capital. We have to think about ways that we can incorporate an understanding of American heritage that actually brings in people of color, brings in people of immigrant origin, along with people who value that from a more nationalist standpoint. The second question I think we need to ask ourselves is, how can we make partisan choices somehow less meaningful? Right now, so much of who we are is caught up in our political views and in our partisan affinities, and we're prejudging people that way. But actually, we need to find ways of breaking down the social boundary that partisanship has created if we're ever going to start having conversations with people, if we're ever going to start listening to people. Third, how can we make immigration a source of common ground rather than as a source of polarization? Immigration right now, unfortunately, has become a litmus test for a sort of association with subcultures, but also an association with partisanship. It's become so predictive of a greater sort of identity, a greater view of America, that it has made the subject matter rather toxic, that we can't actually discuss it in a coffee table or in a dinner table conversation. We need to debarb the issue. We need to deactivate the issue so that we can actually begin to listen to each other, to understand what the sort of values we share are together in order to actually advance together in a conversation rather than shut each other's down with this sort of politics of invalidation. And finally, we should be asking ourselves, how can we render more confidence in the United States immigration system? And how do we redefine what it means to be an American? These are questions that go hand in hand together. To render confidence in the American immigration system, there has to be an exertion of control, some way of regulating it so that people have confidence that the U.S. government is actually being strategic in who we are bringing in our pursuit of the best and the brightest, in our pursuit of a future America. But also, how can we redefine what that future of America looks like when we actually are engaging with such a diverse population going forward? How can we make everyone feel included so that when we're talking about the politics of diversity and inclusion, we don't have people say, oh, well, they're just talking about immigrants or they're just talking about people of color. No, inclusion must mean inclusion.